Hi guys, John Florez, through with the career wrap-up and ready to wrap up the final videos for this site, even though a couple of additional cuts may be posted at some time, okay? But this is the beginning of my life retrospective, the things I've learned being a human being on this planet, starting with music. But I'm going to cover some things. I'm not in any way suggesting this will apply to you or your points of view or anything. I'm just telling you what I've learned. All right. So expressing yourself through music. There are tons of ways that you can do this, and I'll start with my personal experience and then I'll share a little more after that, okay? When I was in my teens, I expressed myself through music by playing guitar. I played surf guitar, I played the Ventures, I played Dwayne Eddy type guitar. I played what was happening at that time, and then when the Beatles came in, I was in trouble because it started getting more complicated chords, melodies, all of that. So teenage years, expressed myself through playing guitar. The next several years, I expressed myself through learning how to produce records. So I was in the studio starting in the early 60s all the way through the late 60s when RCA hired me. And I didn't know that I would be a record producer. I was studying mass communications at Arizona State University. I knew I didn't want to be a broadcaster, but I thought maybe I could be involved in TV and film, something like that. And it didn't happen that way. And we'll talk about the way things just seem to happen in your life in another chapter. But as the production years continued and continued on for quite some time, I realized, whoa, isn't this just amazing? I never would have thought that life could be this grand. This is the ultimate form of musical expression, to be able to take the greatest musicians and singers, dealing with the greatest songwriters, composers, engineers, everything. It was just stunning to me. It was a little self-absorbing, and I admit that I did all kinds of things a little goofy. I mean, I cut my honeymoon short by 1 week just to get back in the studio for RCA. Music was my everything. And when it ended, I thought, that's the end of the years where I will express myself musically. No, that was silly. Granted, I went on for a 30-some year career in technology. That wasn't planned either, by the way. That just happened the same way that the music production career happened. But as time went on, I began adding music to technology projects. So I created a life skills package to teach kids, or at least to interact with kids and their parents on life skills like honesty, persistence, integrity, friendship, all kinds of issues that were just fabulous to express. And I used music and multimedia elements to express myself. So I was beginning to use the computer and digital technology to do a form of musical expression, though the music wasn't my own at this point. I was using others. So just when that project ended after 8 very long years, what happened is I started listening to my previous productions, 150 tracks, something like that, and saying, you know, these things don't sound the way that they're supposed to. I mean, even back then, they didn't sound the way they were supposed to. And the reason is that I was always on a budget. I wasn't one of those guys, the flamboyant producers, the flamboyant artists who yelled and screamed and got these massive budgets. I was always on a tight leash. So I had to get in, produce the record, mix it down quickly, and get out. I was never offered the luxury of spending an extensive amount of time to get these projects to sound right. So bing, light bulb goes off, 5 years ago. And I said, let me try to make my former productions sound like I would like them to sound, and I would have liked them to sound back then. So it turns out that what I'm doing is I'm still expressing myself through music, and I'm in my late 60s and now early 70s. You could not have told me when I was growing up that I would have the width, that I would have the range of musical expression activities that I've had this entire many decades. This is just fabulous. They say music is in your blood. Yeah, music is in my blood. But do I want to go into the studio and produce new artists? No. I did that, and I did it for a long time back in the late 60s through the mid 80s. No interest whatsoever in that, and if you offer me an overdub session, I think I will tear my hair out. Well, my hair's already pretty well gone. But the thing I would like to impart to you by using my life as an example that I've just shared with you is that there are infinite ways to express your musicality. And I believe that divine intelligence, a power greater than ourselves, decides how this expression of your musical love and your musical gifts goes out into the world. It's not for me to say, because I didn't direct any of that. This all just kind of happened by being in what I would like to call the flow of life. So it surprised me the way mine worked, but I'll tell you right now, with you and your music, if you want to express yourself musically, you can do it at all levels, and you can put yourself out there and see where you land. It could be in a professional arena where you're competing with the finest people in the world and you're making semi-great bucks. Could be like my big brother Jerry, rest in peace, he died this past December, who studied in New York to be a Mitch Miller chorus singer, and he never was able to do it. But what did he do? He sang at personal events and weddings and things like that over many years. Was he disappointed that he didn't go further with his voice and made bigger appearances and maybe been on a talk show or two? Yes, he was. He was really disappointed. But that's the way, in a natural flow of life, that his music was allowed to express itself, the way mine has been allowed to express itself in several different arenas within the broad area of music. So basically what I'm saying is, you lead with your talent, you develop whatever talent you have, and then you start putting yourself out there. You start networking, you start circulating, you start seeing what doors will open and what doors will close. And let me be very clear, the top talent doesn't always rise to the top, like the cream doesn't always rise to the top. I have 2 4-octave singers that I have produced over the years who are as talented as you're ever going to want to hear, and they never became big stars. And I've got one group like the Hughes Corporation with Rock the Boat where, I'm sorry, most groups could have sung that and had a hit with it. It was the rhythm track and the catchy little Rock the Boat chorus that sold that. So here a rather ordinary singing group makes it big, has a #1 record in the nation, and here are my 2 4-octave singers who can't get arrested. So great talent does not always equal a professional singing career or stardom. Okay, but what does happen is once you circulate, you network, you start putting yourself out there, the various venues that you will be able to express your music will appear if you are willing to do the footwork. You see, you're a co-creator in this process. You are doing the legwork, and divine intelligence will help open the doors while you do the legwork. Now, I know I'm not going to appeal to everybody with this statement, but for me, in my entire lifetime, with anything that I have pursued, goal achievement has never worked. Now, that's not to dismiss the people who wanted to become Olympic stars or professional sports players or top singers, and anybody who studied and pushed and set goals and went to the top. Kudos to them. That's wonderful. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about me and how it worked for me and how it, if you're like me, may end up working for you. And that is the John Lennon quote, "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." Yes, for my entire lifetime, if it's on my yellow legal pad as an agenda of goals, those items will rarely, if ever, happen. The doors that get open for me are often the ones where I get tapped on the back of my shoulder and they say, "Hey John, look over here." Look over where? I'm not looking there. I'm looking at my agenda. I'm looking at my goals. No, here's an opportunity for you. Have you considered this? No, I don't think I want to. It's not on my legal pad. Yeah, well, maybe you better look at it, because there's a good chance that's the next chapter in your life. Now, it's not always true. Sometimes you get tapped on the back shoulder and you say, "Whoa, that's what I'm supposed to do." No, not necessarily. That's a choice you're being given. That's something you're given the opportunity to look into and decide whether that might work for you or not. And you don't do it just perfunctorily. You check out that total unexpected opportunity in depth. You interview, you do whatever you have to do in order to find out whether that really will work for you. It's not the thought of that opportunity. The thought is meaningless until you get a real sense of the people involved and whether you want to be involved with that or not. And then if you do, go for it. If you don't, keep putting your foot in the water, keep going out and networking for what you're working on, and divine intelligence will lead the way, maybe to what you're working on, which I would call your preferences, not goals, preferences. This is what I would prefer to have happen. And divine intelligence will say, yeah, here's some doors for that. Or maybe you better look over here, a place where you've never even thought to look. That's how I ended up with a 35-year career in technology, which stunned me because I thought it was a pickup job that was last a year or two. And then that technology gig led to my ability to use technology to work not only with other people's music and film, and to make my own music sound even better. None of these things were on my agenda. Okay, so that is the chapter on expressing your creativity through music. And it's not just music. It can be anything, expressing your creativity through anything that excites you. Go do it. Don't be passive. Walk into the world, let the world know your talents and your intentions, and do the best you can to make that happen and see what comes out. You may be surprised.